A man is driving down a highway and he hits and kills a rabbit. He gets out of the car and walks over to the rabbit. He picks it up and starts crying, thinking he's a horrible person. Someone else driving down the highway stops and walks over to him and asks, "What happened?" The man replies, "I hit this rabbit with my car, and now it's dead." The other person gets a thoughtful look on their face and goes back to their car. They rummage around in the trunk and eventually walk back over to the man holding a spray bottle. They spray the rabbit with the bottle and it comes back to life. It starts hopping away, turning back every few hops to wave at the two people. The man, astounded, turns to the other person and asks, "What was in that bottle?" The other person replies, "It's hairspray." It's the World Cup final, and a man makes his way to his seat right next to the pitch. He sits down, noticing that the seat next to him is empty. He leans over and asks his neighbor if someone will be sitting there. "No," says the neighbor, "the seat is empty." "This is incredible," said the man. "Who in their right mind would have a seat like this for the final and not use it?" The neighbor says, "Well, actually, the seat belongs to me. I was supposed to come with my wife, but she passed away. This is the first World Cup final we haven't been to together since we got married." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's terrible. But couldn't you find someone else, a friend, relative, or even a neighbor to take her seat?" The man shakes his head. "No, they're all at the funeral." "400 passengers, but only 200 meals were loaded onto a flight from Delhi to New York City. It was only discovered after takeoff. When the flight attendants started going through their preparations for the meals, so the airline had bungled and the crew was in a fix. However, one smart flight attendant had an idea. A couple of hours into the flight, she nervously announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, we don't know how this happened, but we have over 400 people on board, but only 200 dinners. Anyone who is kind enough to give up their meal to someone else will receive unlimited free liquor for the duration of the flight." Her next announcement came 6 hours later. "Ladies and gentlemen, if anyone wants to change their mind, we still have 180 dinners available." Four men are in the hospital waiting room because their wives are having babies. A nurse goes up to the first guy and says, "Congratulations! You're the father of twins." "That's odd," answers the man. "I work for the Minnesota Twins." A nurse says to the second guy, "Congratulations! You're the father of triplets." "That's weird," answers the second man. "I work for the 3M company." A nurse tells the third man, "Congratulations! You're the father of quadruplets." "That's strange," he answers. "I work for the Four Seasons Hotel." The last man is groaning and banging his head against the wall. "What's wrong?" the others ask. Fourth man bemoans, "I work for 7-Up." A young boy enters a barber shop and the barber whispers to his customer, "This is the dumbest kid in the world. Watch while I prove it to you." The barber puts a dollar bill in one hand and 2 quarters in the other, then calls the boy over and asks, "Which do you want, son?" The boy takes the quarters and leaves. "What did I tell you?" said the barber. "That kid never learns." Later, when the customer leaves, he sees the same young boy coming out of the ice cream parlor. "Hey, son, may I ask you a question? Why did you take the quarters instead of the dollar bill?" The boy licked his cone and replied, "Because the day I take the dollar, the game is over." A New York attorney representing a wealthy art collector called his client and said to him, "Sam, I have some good news and I have some bad news." The art collector replied, "I've had an awful day. Let's hear the good news first." The attorney said, "Well, I met with your wife today, and she informed me that she invested $5,000 in 2 pictures that she thinks will bring a minimum of 15 to 20 million. I think she could be right." Sam replied enthusiastically, "Well done! My wife is a brilliant businesswoman. You've just made my day. Now I know I can handle the bad news. What is it?" The attorney replied, "The pictures are of you with your secretary." In my neighborhood, there was a couple who had given their twin sons very weird names. One was named Trouble, while the other boy's name was Mind Your Own Business. So, one day, they were playing hide and seek. Mind Your Business counted to 100 and then started looking for his brother. But, somehow, he couldn't find him anywhere. He saw a police car passing the neighborhood, so he stopped it to ask for help. When the police officer asked him for his name, he replied, "Mind your own business." Feeling insulted, the police officer still asked politely who he was looking for. "Mind your own business" replied, "I am looking for trouble." Putin is held hostage by a terrorist. A Russian truck driver stops at the back of a long queue on the motorway. He sees a policeman walking down the line of stopped cars to briefly talk to the drivers. As the policeman approaches the truck driver rolls down his window and asks, "What's going on?" "Policeman, a terrorist is holding Putin hostage in a car. He's demanding 10 million rubles or he'll douse Putin in petrol and set him on fire. So we're asking drivers for donations." Driver: "Oh, okay. How much do people donate on average?" Policeman: "About a gallon." A taxi passenger tapped the driver on the shoulder to ask him a question. The driver screamed, lost control of the car, nearly hit a bus, went up on the footpath, and stopped inches from a shop window. For a second, everything was quiet in the cab. Then the driver said, "Look, mate, don't ever do that again. You scared the living daylights out of me." The passenger apologized and said, "I didn't realize that a little tap would scare you so much." The driver replied, "Sorry, it's not really your fault. Today is my first day as a cab driver. I've been driving a funeral van for the last 25 years. A man takes his sick chihuahua to the veterinarian. They're immediately taken back to a room. Soon, a Labrador walks in, sniffs the Chihuahua for 10 minutes and leaves. Then a cat comes in, stares at the Chihuahua for 10 minutes and leaves. Finally, the doctor comes in, prescribes some medicine, and hands the man a $250 bill. "This must be a mistake," the man says. "I've been here only 20 minutes. "No mistake," the doctor says. "It's $100 for the lab test, $100 for the CAT scan, and $50 for the medicine." Tim decided to tie the knot with his longtime girlfriend. One evening, after the honeymoon, he was organizing his golfing equipment. His wife was standing nearby watching him. After a long period of silence, she finally speaks. "Tim, I've been thinking, now that we're married, maybe it's time you quit golfing. You spend so much time on the course. You could probably get a good price for your clubs." Tim gets this horrified look on his face. She says, "Darling, what's wrong?" Tim says, "For a minute there, you were beginning to sound like my ex-wife." "Ex-wife!" She screams. "I didn't know you were married before." "I wasn't," he replied. A man was driving down the road when a policeman stopped him. The officer looked in the back of the man's truck and said, "Why are these penguins in your truck?" The man replied, "These are my penguins. They belong to me." "You need to take them to the zoo," the policeman said. The next day, the officer saw the same guy driving down the road. He pulled him over again. He saw the penguins were still in the truck, but they were wearing sunglasses this time. "I thought I told you to take these penguins to the zoo." The officer said, "I did." The man replied, "And today I'm taking them to the beach." A husband and wife at custody court. The judge looks sternly at the ex-wife. "Judge, why do you think you deserve custody of the child?" "Ex-wife, I brought him into this world, so I should have custody of him." "Judge, that is a simple yet good reason." Then the judge looks towards the ex-husband. "Judge, why do you think you deserve custody of the child, sir?" The ex-husband thought long and hard about his response. After a brief moment of silence, he replies, "If I put money into a Pepsi machine and a Pepsi comes out, is it mine or the machine's?" Amy Schumer was walking through Manhattan and saw a long queue. Wondering what it was for, she joined it. People would look over their shoulder, see that it was Schumer behind them, and leave the queue, so she would proceed closer and closer to the front. As she was getting closer to the head of the queue, she asked one guy, who also looked and was about to walk away, "Wait a second. What is this queue for, and why are you now leaving it?" The man said, "This is the queue for Canadian immigration visas, but if you are getting one, I don't need one now." A fellow was walking along a country road when he came upon a farmer working in his field. The man called out to the farmer, "How long will it take me to get to the next town?" The farmer didn't answer. The guy waited a bit and then started walking again. After the man had gone about 100 yards, the farmer yelled out, It will take you about 20 minutes. The guy inquires, "Thank you, but why didn't you tell me that when I asked you?" The farmer replied, "I didn't know how fast you could walk." So, the wife and I were in town shopping, and as we came out of a store, 3 girls aged between 18 and 20 walked by, wearing tiny crop tops and short skirts. One of them, a tall blonde, had really fantastic, long, toned and tanned legs. I gently nudged my wife and said, "I bet you wish you still had legs like that." She got really upset with me. In fact, I could still hear her sobbing as I wheeled her up the ramp into the next store. A food critic visits a local restaurant to review its food for the town magazine. The owner welcomes him and shows him to the table. The food is presented to him, and after a while, the critic calls the owner to say that there is something missing in his bowl of soup. The owner asks whether it is too spicy or sweet or salty. When the food critic says no, the owner decides to taste the soup himself, but he couldn't find the spoon. "Yeah," says the critic, "that's what is missing." I was in a barber shop when a man and his young son walked in to get a haircut. The man asked the barber to give his son a haircut while he shopped for groceries nearby. The barber finished giving the haircut, but there was no sign of the father. An hour passed. 2 hours passed. We finally asked the son where his father was. The boy shocked us by saying, "That man was not my father. He just told me that if I wanted to get a free haircut at the barber shop, I should come with him." A redneck's father passed away in his sleep, so in the morning he calls 911 to come pick up the body. The 911 operator told him that she would send someone out right away. "Where do you live?" asked the operator. He replied, "At the end of Eucalyptus Drive." The operator asked, "Can you spell that for me?" There was a long pause and finally he said, "How about if I drag him over to Oak Street and you pick him up there?" Tom's nagging wife died suddenly on a trip to Jerusalem. Funeral director said, "Sir, it would cost about $45,000 if we send her home back to the States, or $500 if we bury her here in Jerusalem." Tom says, "Ship her home." Funeral director says, "But sir, why don't you bury her here in the Holy Land and you can save money?" Tom says, "A long time ago, a man was buried here, and 3 days later, he rose from the dead. I can't take that chance." Two campers are walking through the woods when a huge brown bear suddenly appears in the clearing about 50 feet in front of them. The bear sees the campers and begins to head toward them. The first guy drops his backpack, digs out a pair of sneakers, and frantically begins to put them on. The second guy says, "What are you doing? Sneakers won't help you outrun that bear." "I don't need to outrun the bear," the first guy says. "I just need to outrun you." A man and his wife are at a restaurant, and the husband keeps staring at an old drunken lady swigging her gin at a nearby table. His wife asks, "Do you know her?" "Yes," sighs the husband. "She's my ex-wife. She took to drinking right after we divorced 7 years ago, and I hear she hasn't been sober since." "My God," says the wife. "Who would think a person could go on celebrating that long?" Once, a mosquito walked into a clinic. The doctor saw him and asked him what the matter was. The mosquito said that he had a lot of problems. He was not happy with his life. He was not happy with the job he was doing. He was sad and had no motivation. The doctor listened to his problems and told him that he should really visit a therapist instead of a doctor. The mosquito replied, "Yeah, I know. I just came in because of the blood." A climber fell off a cliff, and as he tumbled down, he caught hold of a small branch. "Help! Is there anybody up there?" he shouted. A majestic voice boomed through the gorge. "I will help you, my son, but first, you must have faith in me." "Yes, yes, I trust you," cried the man. "Let go of the branch," boomed the voice. There was a long pause, and the man shouted up again, "Is there anybody else up there?" A tough old cowboy from Texas counseled his granddaughter that if she wanted to live a long life, the secret was to sprinkle a pinch of gunpowder on her oatmeal every morning. The granddaughter did this religiously until the age of 103. When she died, she left behind 14 children, 30 grandchildren, 45 great-grandchildren, 25 great-great-grandchildren, and a 40-foot hole where the crematorium used to be. A boy read a restaurant sign that advertised fat-free French fries. "Sounds great," said the health-conscious boy. He ordered some. He watched as the cook pulled a basket of fries from the fryer. The potatoes were dripping with oil when the cook put them into the container. "Wait a minute," the boy said. "Those don't look fat-free." "Sure they are," the cook said. "We charge only for the potatoes." An 8-year-old boy had never spoken a word. One afternoon, as he sat eating his lunch, he turned to his mother and said, "The soup is cold." His astonished mother exclaimed, "Son, I've waited so long to hear you speak. But all these years you never said a thing. Why haven't you spoken before?" The boy looked at her and replied, "Up until now, everything has been satisfactory." A kid is going to his first day of school. He looks worried. His dad asks him, "What's wrong?" "Nervous?" the kid asks. "How long do I have to go to school for?" "Until you're 18, says the father. The kid nods and thinks about this quietly. When they get to the front gates of the school, the kid says, "Dad, you will remember to come and get me when I'm 18, won't you?" two crows were in a field when they noticed a figure that looked like a man in the distance. "See that over there?" "What is that?" says the first crow. The second crow takes a long look. "That's a scarecrow. Looks authentic, doesn't it?" "How can you tell it's a scarecrow and not a person?" replies the first crow. "Look at its hands." "No cell phone," says the second crow. Three friends stranded on a deserted island find a magic lamp. Inside, it is a genie who agrees to grant each friend one wish. "I want to go home," says the first friend. The genie grants her wish. "I want to go home too," says the second friend, and the genie sends him back home. "I'm lonely," says the third friend. "I sure wish my friends were back here." A businessman went into the office and found an inexperienced handyman painting the walls. The handyman was wearing two heavy parkas on a hot summer day. Thinking this was a little strange, the businessman asked the handyman why he was wearing the parkas on such a hot day. The handyman showed him the instructions on the can of paint. They read, "For best results, put on 2 coats." Two children asked their mother to stay in bed one Mother's Day morning. As she lay there, looking forward to breakfast in bed, the smell of bacon floated up from the kitchen. But after a good long wait, she finally went downstairs to investigate. She found them both sitting at the table eating bacon and eggs. They explained, "As a surprise for Mother's Day, we decided to cook our own breakfast." The historians had gathered for a party in Cairo after they had discovered a new mummy. The discovered mummy, on display at the party hall, suddenly woke up. Seeing the historians alarmed, the mummy said that he just wanted to listen to some music. The mummy said, "Please, don't play jazz, because my trombones are in a very bad shape. Could someone please put on some rap music?" A family was having dinner once when the youngest boy asked his father whether worms tasted nice when we eat them. Both the parents reprimanded the little boy and told him that these things shouldn't be discussed over the dinner table. When the father asked the boy after dinner why he had asked such a question, he replied, "Papa, I think worms taste okay because there was one in your noodles." I visited a cafe yesterday with my friends. The waiter recommended that we try their special coffee. We agreed, and soon the coffee arrived. As we drank the coffee, we realized that it tastes like dirt and mud. Disgusted by the fact, all of us complained immediately. The alarmed waiter rushes over and says, "Well, sir, it was freshly ground coffee." I was in my garden when I got the news that my father had fallen from a 20-feet ladder and was in the hospital. I rushed to the hospital expecting that my father had some major fractures, but he was all right except for some minor cuts. When I told him that it was a miracle, he disagreed and told me, "Son, I had just fallen from the first step of the ladder." "Make me one with everything," says the Buddhist to the tofu hot dog vendor. Then, after getting his tofu hot dog, the Buddhist hands the vendor a $20 bill. The vendor takes the money and begins helping the next customer. The Buddhist looks puzzled and asks the vendor, "Where is my change?" The vendor replies, "Change comes from within." I went to this haunted house for exploration. It was near the forest, so the local guide warned me that I might find some animals there. Sure enough, there was a panda. When I offered it some food, I was taken aback because it suddenly started talking. Turned out that it was a ghost panda, and it only ate bamboo. After Sunday church, the priest would hand us each an orange and a big cookie. A little girl once lied and took 2 oranges. But the priest told her she mustn't lie because God is watching. Then the girl took 2 cookies and lied about it. When asked why she had done that, she said because she thought that God was only watching the oranges. Two young salmon are swimming along one day. As they do, they are passed by a wiser, older fish coming the other way. The wiser fish greets the two as he passes, saying, "Morning, boys! How's the water?" The other two continue to swim in silence for a little while, until the first one turns to the other and asks, "What the hell is water?" I was once passing through a town in England when this lady stopped me because she needed help fixing her car that had broken down. As I was fixing the car, the lady would cross the road and shout, "Hello" at me. This happened a few times as the lady found it really amusing. I would have thought that it was very weird had I not realized that it was the singer Adele. After Sunday church, the priest would hand us each an orange and a big cookie. A little girl once lied and took 2 oranges. But the priest told her she mustn't lie because God is watching. Then the girl took 2 cookies and lied about it. When asked why she had done that, she said because she thought that God was only watching oranges. A man stands in line at a supermarket in Moscow. After an hour, he loses his patience and yells, "Putin is to blame for this. I'm going to the Kremlin and I will get rid of him." 30 minutes later, he's back in line at the supermarket. "Why are you here again?" asks another waiter. "The line in front of the Kremlin is twice as long as this one." "If there are any idiots in the room, will they please stand up?" said the sarcastic teacher. After a long silence, one freshman rose to his feet. "Now then, mister, why do you consider yourself an idiot?" inquired the teacher with a sneer. Well, actually, I don't, said the student, but I hate to see you standing up there all by yourself. A guy said to God, God, is it true that to you a billion years is like a second? God said yes. The guy said, God, is it true that to you $1 billion is like a penny? God said yes. The guy said, God, can I have a penny? God said, sure, just a second. My brother came back from school all motivated because he said he would be following a new diet from that day. We didn't really give it much thought until my brother really started eating his homework for dinner. When we stopped him and asked why he was doing that, he replied, I was just trying to see how it tasted because my teacher said that the homework would be a piece of cake for me. Once during an adventure, a farmer named Brian Clay stumbled into a cave and found a magic lamp. Upon rubbing the lamp, a genie appeared and asked him what his wish was. The farmer told him that he wished he was very rich. The genie said, okay, and asked him, all right, Mr. Very Rich Clay, what is your second wish? An MIT linguistics professor was lecturing his class the other day. In English, he said, a double negative forms a positive. However, in some languages, such as Russian, a double negative remains a negative. But there isn't a single language, not one, in which a double positive can express a negative. A voice from the back of the room said, yeah, right. As a group of robbers entered the bank, their leader went to the manager and asked him to open the vault. He threatened the manager by saying, if you try to do anything smart, you're fiction. The manager was confused and asked him, don't you mean you are history? The robber angrily replied back, do not change the subject, okay? Britain's oldest woman turned 114 today. When asked the secret of her longevity, she attributed it to taking a walk at midnight every night. When quizzed on whether she was concerned about the increase in muggings in recent years, she said that she was not and would continue mugging people as long as her health holds out. A patient comes into the clinic and says, Doctor, my bum hurts. Doctor inquires, where specifically does it hurt? Patient says, right around the entrance. Doctor says, yeah, well, that's the exit. As long as you think it's an entrance, it'll continue to hurt. During my checkup, I asked the doctor, do you think I'll live a long and healthy life? He replied, I doubt it somehow. Mercury is in Uranus right now. I said, I don't go in for any of that astrology nonsense. He replied, neither do I. My thermometer just broke. During a recent password audit, it was found that a blonde was using the following password: Mickey, Minnie, Pluto, Huey, Louie, Dewey, Donald, Goofy, Sacramento. When asked why such a long password, she said she was told that it had to be at least 8 characters long and include at least one capital. A guy is sitting at home when he hears a knock at the door. He opens the door and sees a snail on the porch. He picks up the snail and throws it as far as he can. A year later, there's another knock at the door. He opens it and sees the same snail. The snail says, "What was that all about?" A cruise ship passes by a remote island, and the passengers see a bearded man running around and waving his arms wildly. "Captain," one passenger asks, "who is that man over there?" "I have no idea," the captain says, "but he goes nuts every year when we pass him." My friend once called a few house painters to his house for some work. He wanted them to paint his porch. After a few hours, the house painters came back for the payment as their work was complete. Before leaving, they told my friend that they had enjoyed painting his car, but it is not really a Porsche. My daughter brought a friend from school, and she said his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was coming to pick him up later. I was impressed and asked, "Does he know how his so many greats-grandfather lived for so long?" My daughter answered, "It's because of my friend's stutter." A wife got so mad at her husband, she packed his bags and told him to get out. As he walked to the door, she yelled, "I hope you die a long, slow, painful death." He turned around and said, "So, you want me to stay?" I was visiting the house of a distant cousin when I saw that he was playing chess with his cat, Mrs. Whiskerson. I proclaimed Mrs. Whiskerson has to be the most intelligent cat ever, to which my cousin replied, "Absolutely not. She has lost all her matches." My boss was honest with me today. He pulled up to work with his sweet new car this morning, and I complimented him on it. He replied, "Well, if you work hard, set goals, stay determined, and put in long hours, I can get an even better one next year." The wife and I took a long, leisurely drive out to the country and pulled over to fill up our car's gas tank and tires. She was surprised to see that the station had a fee to fill the tires and asked me, "Why in the world do they charge for air?" I responded, "Inflation." After a prolonged drought, when the rain came, all the animals in the forest were happy, except the kangaroo. When the others asked him what the reason was for such sadness, the kangaroo revealed that the rain meant that all its kids would now be playing inside. A guy asks a lawyer about his fees. I charge $50 for 3 questions, the lawyer says. That's awfully steep, isn't it? The guy asks. Yes, I suppose so, the lawyer replies. Now, what's your final question? My daughter wants the new iPhone for her birthday. I told her she will get one as long as she has good grades, does her chores, and follows the house rules. Otherwise, she will get a cheaper phone. It's my way or the Huawei. After 5 long years of studying, a student comes rushing into Einstein's office shouting, Sir, I finally understand your theory of special relativity. Einstein rolls his eyes and says, It's about time. My girlfriend and I are trying this long-distance relationship thing. I have to stay 100 feet away from her at all times. Also, the police say I should stop referring to her as my girlfriend.